The sun, a malevolent eye in a vast, indifferent sky, beats down on the Pacific. It's a canvas of endless blue, stretching to horizons that promise nothing but more blue. But on this shimmering expanse, a tiny speck of orange and gray bobs precariously. A life raft barely larger than a bathtub. Inside, two men cling to existence, their skin flayed by the sun, their bodies skeletal, their eyes hollowed by thirst and despair. This is the 30th day, or perhaps the 35th. Time has become a cruel, fluid concept, measured only by the rising and setting of that merciless sun, by the ebb and flow of consciousness. Louis Zamperini, once a blur of speed on an Olympic track, now lies prostrate, his mind a battlefield of hallucination and stark reality. His lips are cracked, his tongue swollen, a desert in his mouth. Every breath is a struggle, every movement an agony. Beside him, Russell Allen Phillips. Phil, his pilot, is equally ravaged, his gaze often lost in the shimmering heat haze. A shadow falls over the raft. Not a cloud, but something vast and dark beneath the surface. Louis's eyes, crusted with salt, snap open. He sees it, a monstrous shape, sleek and gray, circling. A shark, not one but several. They are drawn by the scent of desperation, by the faint, metallic tang of human suffering. Their fins slice through the water, silent and menacing, a grim escort in this watery purgatory. Louis pushes himself up, his muscles screaming in protest. He grabs the oar, a flimsy piece of wood that feels impossibly heavy. His arms, once powerful, now tremble with the effort. He swings it, a pathetic gesture against the ocean's apex predators. The sharks dart away, only to return, bolder, closer. He can feel the vibrations of their bodies against the raft, a terrifying thrumming that resonates through his bones. "Not today," he whispers, his voice a dry rasp. "Not like this." His mind flashes back to the first shark, days ago. A sudden, violent lurch, the raft nearly capsizing. He'd seen its gaping maw, rows of serrated teeth, inches from Phil's leg. Instinct had taken over. He'd plunged his hand into the water, punching the creature on the nose, a desperate, primal act. It had worked for a moment. But the ocean is relentless, and its inhabitants are patient. The sun climbs higher, baking the raft, turning the air into a suffocating oven. The heat is a physical presence, pressing down, stealing what little moisture remains in their bodies. Louis's vision blurs. He sees shimmering oases, lush islands, beautiful women offering cool drinks. He knows they are not real, but the temptation to surrender to these mirages is overwhelming. He fights it, clenching his fists, digging his nails into his palms, using the pain to anchor himself to reality. Thirst. It's a living entity, a burning fire in his throat, a dull ache in his kidneys. He dreams of water, cool, fresh, abundant water. He remembers the taste of rain, the feel of a cold shower. These memories are both a blessing and a curse, a reminder of what he has lost, what he craves with every fiber of his being. He looks at Phil, who is now stirring. Phil's eyes meet his, a shared understanding of their predicament, a silent pact of survival. They are two fragile beings, adrift in an infinite blue, surrounded by predators, under the gaze of an indifferent sun. They have faced storms that threatened to tear their raft apart, hunger that gnawed at their insides, and the constant, insidious whisper of despair. They have seen their third companion, Mac, succumb to the elements, his body slipping into the depths, a silent farewell. Louis's internal monologue is a constant battle. "Give up," a voice urges. "It's easier, just let go." But another voice, stronger, more defiant, rises from the depths of his being. "No, not yet, not ever." It's the voice of the boy who refused to be broken, the athlete who pushed past every limit, the bombardier who stared death in the face. He remembers the words of his brother, Pete. If you can take it, you can make it. Those words, a mantra from his youth, echo in his mind, a lifeline in this vast, watery abyss. He will take it. He will make it. He has to, for Phil, for Mac, for himself. The sharks continue their patrol, their dark forms a constant reminder of their vulnerability. Louis raises the oar again, a silent challenge. He is not just fighting the ocean, the sun, the hunger, the thirst. He is fighting for his very soul, for the right to draw another breath, to see another sunrise. This is the ultimate race, and the finish line is nowhere in sight. To understand the extraordinary resilience that kept Louis Zamperini alive on that raft, we must journey back, far from the unforgiving Pacific, to the dusty streets of Torrance, California. This is where Louis, born in 1917 to Italian immigrant parents, began his life not as a hero, but as a notorious troublemaker. Young Louis was a whirlwind of mischief, a pint-sized rebel with an insatiable appetite for adventure and a complete disregard for rules. He smoked at 5, drank at 8, and by the time he was a teenager, he was a seasoned thief, raiding bakeries, grocery stores, and even the local church. He was a constant source of worry for his parents, Anthony and Louise, who struggled to rein in their wild son. He was frequently in fights, often running from the police, and seemed destined for a life behind bars. His older brother, Pete, was everything Louis wasn't: disciplined, popular, and a natural leader. Pete saw something in Louis, a raw energy that, if channeled, could be transformative. He recognized Louis's incredible speed, a gift often used for escaping trouble, and decided to put it to a different use. Pete convinced Louis to join the high school track team. Louis resisted at first, but Pete was relentless. He trained Louis with an iron will, pushing him beyond what he thought possible. Pete's mantra, "If you can take it, you can make it," became the bedrock of Louis's burgeoning athletic career. And Louis, for the first time, found a purpose. The track became his sanctuary, a place where his boundless energy was celebrated, not condemned. He transformed. The delinquent became a phenomenon. Louis Zamperini shattered high school records, his powerful stride and ferocious competitive spirit making him a local legend. He was a natural, a runner who seemed to defy gravity, his lungs burning, his legs churning, leaving all others in his dust. His talent was undeniable, his dedication now absolute. By 1936, at just 19 years old, Louis had achieved the impossible. He qualified for the U.S. Olympic team, bound for the infamous Berlin Games. The journey across the Atlantic was a revelation. Louis, a small-town boy, was suddenly thrust into a world of elite athletes, a world of international competition. He indulged in the lavish food on the ship, gaining weight, a decision he would later regret on the track. Berlin, 1936. The atmosphere was electric, yet chilling. Adolf Hitler, the architect of a coming global catastrophe, used the games as a propaganda spectacle, a showcase for Aryan supremacy. Louis, a brash, curious American, found himself in the heart of this unsettling display. He witnessed the Nazi regime's chilling efficiency, the omnipresent swastikas, the fervent crowds. He competed in the 5,000-meter race. Despite his inexperience and the weight gain, Louis ran with characteristic grit. He started slowly, conserving energy, then unleashed a blistering final lap, clocking an astonishing 56 seconds, one of the fastest in Olympic history for that distance. He finished 8th, but his spectacular finish caught the attention of none other than Hitler himself. From the stands, the Führer reportedly pointed at Louis and declared, "Ah, you're the boy with the fast finish." Louis, ever the rebel, even managed to steal a Nazi flag from Hitler's chancellery, a daring feat that almost landed him in serious trouble. He returned home a hero, his Olympic dream now burning brighter than ever. He set his sights on the 1940 Tokyo Olympics, determined to win gold. He trained harder, ran faster, pushing his body to its absolute limits. He was on the cusp of greatness, poised to become one of America's most celebrated athletes. But history had other plans. The drums of war were beating louder across the globe. The invasion of Poland, the fall of France, the Battle of Britain. The world was rapidly descending into chaos. The 1940 Olympics were cancelled. Louis's dreams of Olympic glory, of standing atop the podium, were abruptly put on hold. The track star, the rebel Olympian, was about to trade his running shoes for a military uniform, his race against the clock for a fight for survival. The world was at war, and Louis Zamperini, with his indomitable spirit, was about to be thrust into its most brutal theater. The WWII attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, shattered America's isolation and propelled Louis Zamperini, like millions of other young men, into the crucible of World War II. His Olympic dreams now a distant memory, Louis enlisted in the Army Air Forces, trading the precise rhythm of the track for the thunderous roar of aircraft engines. He trained as a bombardier, a critical and dangerous role. His job was to operate the Norden bomb sight, a highly complex and secretive device designed to drop bombs with pinpoint accuracy. It required a steady hand, a sharp mind, and nerves of steel, qualities Louis possessed in abundance. He learned to navigate, to calculate wind speed and altitude, to aim for targets hundreds of miles away, all while flying through enemy fire. His training took him to various bases, eventually leading him to Hickam Field in Hawaii. Here, he was assigned to the 372nd Bomb Squadron, 307th Bomb Group, known as the Long Rangers. His aircraft was the B-24 Liberator, a massive four-engine bomber, a flying fortress designed for long-range missions. It was a formidable machine, but also notoriously difficult to fly and prone to mechanical issues. Louis's crew was a tight-knit group, a band of brothers forged in the shared danger of combat. At the controls was First Lieutenant Russell Allen Phillips. Phil, a calm and steady pilot from Indiana. There was also Francis McNamara, Mac, the tail gunner, a quiet, often anxious man. Together, they formed the heart of the Green Hornet, their B-24, named for its distinctive green paint job and its tendency to attract trouble. Their missions were grueling, often stretching for 10 to 12 hours over vast expanses of the Pacific. They flew bombing runs against Japanese-held islands, facing fierce anti-aircraft fire and relentless attacks from Japanese Zero fighters. Louis quickly earned a reputation for his courage and his uncanny ability to remain calm under pressure. He was a natural leader, his Olympic-honed discipline translating seamlessly into the chaos of aerial combat. They had their share of close calls. One mission saw their plane riddled with 594 bullet holes, barely making it back to base. Another time, an engine failed mid-flight, forcing Phil to execute a daring emergency landing. Each mission was a dance with death, a testament to their skill and their luck. Louis, the boy who once outran the police, was now outrunning fate, mile after mile, mission after mission. By May 1943, Louis and his crew had completed numerous combat missions, their bodies and minds weary, but their spirits unbroken. They were stationed on Funafuti, a remote atoll in the Ellis Islands. On May 27th, they were given a new assignment, one that would irrevocably alter the course of their lives. Another B-24 named Starduster had gone down during a search mission for a lost aircraft. Louis's crew, along with several others, was tasked with finding the missing plane and its crew. For this mission, they were given a different B-24, a notoriously unreliable aircraft known as the Green Hornet. It was a plane that had been cannibalized for parts, patched up, and was considered a lemon by the ground crew. As they boarded the Green Hornet that fateful morning, a sense of unease hung in the air. The plane felt heavy, sluggish, but orders were orders. Phil took the controls, Louis settled into his bombardier's seat, and Mac took his position in the tail. They lifted off, a speck against the vast Pacific sky, heading east into the unknown. They were searching for lost men, unaware that they themselves were about to become lost. The Green Hornet lumbered through the sky, a reluctant beast of metal and fuel. The search mission was long, tedious, and ultimately fruitless. Hours passed, the vast expanse of the Pacific offering no sign of the missing Starduster. As they turned back towards Funafuti, a chilling realization began to dawn on Phil. The plane was struggling. One engine sputtered, then died. Phil fought to maintain altitude, his hands gripping the controls, his brow furrowed in concentration. The B-24, already heavy, became even more unwieldy. Then another engine failed. The Green Hornet began to lose altitude rapidly, a lead weight plummeting toward the unforgiving ocean. Inside the fuselage, chaos erupted. The crew scrambled, shouting warnings, bracing for impact. Louis, strapped into his bombardier's position, felt the sickening lurch, the terrifying descent. He knew, with a cold certainty, that this was it. This was the end. Phil, with incredible skill and courage, fought to keep the plane level, hoping to ditch it cleanly on the water. He aimed for a smooth landing, a desperate attempt to give his crew a fighting chance. But the Green Hornet was too damaged, too heavy. The impact was cataclysmic. The plane hit the water with a deafening roar, tearing itself apart. The fuselage buckled, metal shrieked, and the ocean rushed in, a torrent of green and white foam. Louis was thrown violently against his restraints, the force of the crash knocking the wind from his lungs, darkness threatening to consume him. He felt the crushing pressure of the water, the terrifying sensation of being trapped, submerged in a rapidly sinking metal coffin. Disoriented, he struggled against his seatbelt, his lungs screaming for air. He could hear the muffled sounds of the plane groaning, the rush of water, the desperate cries of his crewmates. Somehow, he managed to free himself. He pushed, kicked, clawed his way through the wreckage, past debris and the bodies of his comrades. The water was dark, cold, and filled with the terrifying silence of death. He saw a glimmer of light, a faint hope, and propelled himself towards it, his last reserves of strength fueling his desperate ascent. He burst to the surface, gasping, choking, his lungs burning. The air tasted like salvation. Around him, the ocean was a scene of utter devastation. The Green Hornet was gone, swallowed by the depths, leaving behind a scattering of debris and a slick of oil. Louis looked around frantically. Where was Phil? Where was Mac? He saw a head bobbing in the water, then another. It was Phil, struggling, injured but alive. And then Mac, clinging to a piece of wreckage. Of the 11 men who had taken off that morning, only 3 remained. 8 souls had been lost to the Pacific. The initial shock gave way to a chilling realization. They were alive, but utterly alone. Miles from any land, adrift in an ocean teeming with dangers. The immediate aftermath was a blur of adrenaline and disbelief. They were injured, exhausted, and surrounded by the vast, indifferent sea. Their first priority was survival. They spotted 2 small inflatable life rafts, miraculously intact amidst the debris. With immense effort, they managed to pull themselves into the flimsy vessels, their bodies aching, their minds reeling. They salvaged what little they could. A few chocolate bars, some flares, a small fishing kit, and a handful of emergency rations. It was pitifully little, but it was something. As the sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a profound silence fell over the raft. The roar of the crash had faded, replaced by the gentle lapping of waves against the rubber. Louis looked at Phil, then at Mac. Their faces were grim, etched with the horror of what they had just endured. They were survivors for now, but the true test, the real battle for their lives, had only just begun. The Pacific A beautiful but deadly adversary lay before them, stretching endlessly in every direction. The first few days on the raft were a blur of pain, shock, and the desperate hope of rescue. They scanned the horizon relentlessly, their eyes burning, searching for any sign of a ship or plane. But the days bled into one another, and the horizon remained stubbornly empty. The vastness of the Pacific became their prison, the relentless sun their torturer. Their meager supplies dwindled quickly. The chocolate bars were gone within days. The emergency rations, small blocks of concentrated food, offered little sustenance. Thirst became their most insidious enemy. They collected rainwater when storms passed, cupping their hands, desperate for every drop. But the rain was infrequent, and the sun quickly evaporated any moisture. Their bodies began to waste away, their skin peeling, their lips cracking, their minds growing hazy. Mac, the tail gunner, struggled more than the others. He had been severely traumatized by the crash, and his anxiety was compounded by the relentless hunger and thirst. On the 9th day, in a moment of desperate hunger, Mac ate all the remaining chocolate, a selfish act born of fear and delirium. Louis and Phil, though furious, understood the depth of his despair. It was a stark reminder of how quickly humanity could erode under such extreme conditions. The ocean, while providing their prison, also offered a glimmer of hope. They learned to fish using their bare hands and makeshift hooks. They caught small fish, birds that landed on the raft, even a shark pup. They ate them raw, grateful for any protein, any moisture. Louis, ever resourceful, even managed to fashion a spear from a piece of wood, using it to fend off larger sharks that circled their raft with terrifying regularity. The sharks were a constant, terrifying presence. They bumped the raft, their rough skin scraping against the rubber, their dark forms visible beneath the surface. Louis and Phil would take turns on watch, ready to strike with an oar or a fist if a shark got too close. One day, a massive shark, a true leviathan, attacked the raft, its jaws snapping inches from Louis's face. He fought it off with the oar, a desperate, primal battle for survival. As the days stretched into weeks, their physical deterioration was matched by a profound psychological toll. Hallucinations became common. Louis saw a banquet table laden with food, heard the voices of his family. Phil, too, experienced vivid dreams and waking visions. They clung to each other, their shared suffering forging an unbreakable bond. They talked about home, about their families, about the food they would eat, the lives they would live if they ever made it back. These conversations were their lifeline, a way to hold on to their sanity. On the 33rd day, Mac succumbed. His body, ravaged by starvation and fire, simply gave out. Louis and Phil watched, helpless, as their friend slipped away. They said a prayer, then, with heavy hearts, committed his body to the sea. His death was a stark, brutal reminder of their own mortality, a chilling premonition of what awaited them if rescue did not come soon. Then came another horror. On the 36th day, a Japanese bomber spotted their raft. Instead of rescuing them, the pilot descended, strafing the tiny vessel with machine gun fire. Louis and Phil plunged into the water, diving beneath the raft, holding their breath, praying for the attack to end. The bullets ripped through the rubber, tearing holes in their already fragile sanctuary. They surfaced, gasping, to find the raft riddled with holes, slowly deflating. With incredible ingenuity, they used their bare hands and what little supplies they had to patch the holes, chewing gum and pieces of fabric serving as makeshift repairs. They worked frantically, knowing that if the raft sank, their fate was sealed. They survived the attack, but the psychological wound was deep. They were not just fighting the elements, they were fighting a war, even in this desolate corner of the world. The days that followed were the darkest. Their bodies were skeletal, their minds teetering on the brink of madness. Louis, in a moment of profound despair, prayed. He promised God that if he survived, he would dedicate his life to him. It was a desperate plea, a bargain struck in the face of death. On the 47th day, a miracle, or so it seemed, they spotted land, a small green speck on the horizon. With renewed vigor, they paddled, their emaciated arms finding strength they didn't know they possessed. They reached the shore, collapsing onto the sand, utterly spent. They had survived 47 days adrift, a feat of human endurance almost beyond comprehension. But their ordeal was far from over. The island they had landed on was one of the Marshall Islands, a territory occupied by the Japanese. As they lay on the beach, barely conscious, they were discovered by Japanese soldiers. Their freedom, so recently tasted, was immediately snatched away. The vast, indifferent ocean had delivered them from one hell, only to deposit them into another. Their journey of survival had taken a terrifying new turn. The moment the Japanese soldiers found Louis and Phil on the beach, their relief at reaching land evaporated, replaced by a chilling dread. They were no longer adrift, but they were now prisoners of war, a fate often worse than death in the brutal Pacific theater. Their emaciated bodies, barely clinging to life, were immediately subjected to interrogation. They were taken to Kwajalein Atoll, a notorious Japanese base known as Execution Island. Here, they were separated, subjected to intense questioning, and starved. Louis, despite his weakened state, refused to give up any useful information, adhering to the military code of conduct. He was beaten, deprived of food and water, but his spirit, honed by years of athletic competition and weeks of ocean survival, remained defiant. From Kwajalein, Louis was transferred to various POW camps across Japan, each one a descent into a deeper hell. Omori, Ofuna, Naoetsu, the names would forever be seared into his memory. These were not conventional prison camps. They were places of systematic dehumanization, starvation, and unimaginable cruelty. The daily routine was a relentless cycle of forced labor, meager rations, and constant abuse. Prisoners were beaten for the slightest infraction, for failing to bow correctly, for looking a guard in the eye, or simply for the guard's amusement. Disease was rampant, sanitation non-existent, and medical care a luxury rarely afforded. Men wasted away, their bodies ravaged by dysentery, beriberi, and starvation. It was at Omori, and later Naoetsu, that Louis encountered his most sadistic tormentor, Corporal Mutsuhiro Watanabe, known to the prisoners as the Bird. Watanabe was a psychopath, a man who reveled in inflicting pain and humiliation. He singled out Louis, perhaps sensing his defiant spirit, perhaps because of his Olympic fame, and made it his personal mission to break him. The Bird's cruelty was boundless. He would beat Louis mercilessly, often for hours, with his fists, a belt buckle, or a kendo stick. He forced Louis to perform humiliating tasks, to stand at attention for hours, to clean latrines with his bare hands. He would starve Louis, then offer him food, only to snatch it away at the last moment. He was a master of psychological torture, constantly reminding Louis that he was worthless, that he would never leave the camp alive. Louis endured. He found strength in the camaraderie of his fellow prisoners, a silent network of defiance and mutual support. They shared scraps of food, whispered stories of home, and found ways to subvert the guard's authority, even in small symbolic acts. They were a testament to the human spirit's capacity for resilience, even in the face of absolute evil. One particularly brutal incident involved Louis being forced to hold a heavy wooden beam above his head for hours. If he dropped it, he would be beaten to death. The Bird watched, a cruel smile on his face, waiting for Louis to collapse. But Louis, drawing on every ounce of his Olympic training on Pete's mantra, held on. His muscles screamed, his body trembled, but he refused to give the Bird the satisfaction of seeing him break. He held the beam until he collapsed from exhaustion, but he had not dropped it. He had won a small but significant victory. Another time, the bird forced Louis to punch his fellow prisoners, threatening to kill them if Louis refused. Louis, in a desperate act of defiance, delivered weak, theatrical blows, earning him a brutal beating from the bird, but sparing his friends. These acts of resistance, however small, were crucial for maintaining his sense of self, his humanity. As the war dragged on, conditions in the camps worsened. The prisoners were moved to Nauetsu, a camp near a coal mine where the work was even more brutal, the cold more biting, and the bird's presence more constant. Louis's body was a wreck, his weight plummeting, his health failing. He was constantly on the verge of death, but something deep within him refused to surrender. He had survived the ocean. He would survive this. He had to. The war was nearing its end, but the prisoners had no way of knowing. They heard distant bombings, saw planes flying overhead, but their captors kept them in the dark, feeding them propaganda. The fear of execution loomed large, as the Japanese often killed prisoners before the Allies could liberate them. Louis Zamperini, the Olympic runner, the bombardier, the ocean survivor, was now a ghost of his former self, but his spirit, though battered and bruised, remained unbroken. The end of the war came suddenly, dramatically. In August 1945, the atomic bombs fell on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The Japanese Empire surrendered. For the prisoners of war, it was a moment of unimaginable relief, a sudden, glorious end to years of torment. Louis Zamperini, a skeletal figure weighing barely 80 pounds, was finally free. The American forces arrived, bringing food, medical care, and the joyous news of liberation. Louis was repatriated, a long journey home across the Pacific, a journey he now made in comfort, surrounded by fellow survivors. He returned to America, a hero, but a deeply scarred one. The physical wounds would heal, but the psychological scars of his ordeal, particularly the torment inflicted by the bird, ran deep. He married Cynthia Applewhite, a beautiful and compassionate woman, and tried to build a new life. But the war, and especially the bird, haunted him. He suffered from severe PTSD, experiencing terrifying nightmares, flashbacks, and a crippling rage. He drank heavily, his life spiraling out of control, his marriage strained to its breaking point. He was alive, but he was not truly living. Cynthia, desperate to save her husband and their marriage, convinced him to attend a Billy Graham crusade in 1949. Louis, a skeptic, went reluctantly. But something profound happened that night. As Graham spoke of forgiveness and redemption, Louis's mind flashed back to his desperate prayer on the raft. He had promised God his life if he survived. Now he was being called to fulfill that promise. In that moment, Louis Zamperini found peace. He embraced Christianity, and the rage that had consumed him began to dissipate. He stopped drinking, his nightmares ceased, and his marriage was healed. He realized that true freedom wasn't just escaping the camps. It was escaping the hatred that still held him captive. His journey of forgiveness culminated in an extraordinary act. In 1950, Louis returned to Japan, not for revenge, but to meet his former captors. He visited the prisons where he had suffered, offering forgiveness to the guards who had brutalized him. Many were moved to tears, seeking his pardon. He even attempted to meet the bird, but Watanabe refused, remaining a fugitive. Louis Zamperini dedicated the rest of his long life to helping others. He founded a camp for troubled youth, sharing his story of resilience and redemption. He became a motivational speaker, inspiring millions with his message of hope, forgiveness, and the power of the human spirit. He carried the Olympic torch at the 1984 and 1998 Winter Olympics, a full-circle moment for the boy whose Olympic dreams were interrupted by war. Louis Zamperini passed away in 2014 at the age of 97. His life was a testament to the extraordinary capacity of the human spirit to endure, to forgive, and to find redemption even after experiencing the darkest depths of human cruelty. From a rebellious youth to an Olympic athlete, from a bombardier to a castaway, from a tortured POW to a beacon of forgiveness, Louis Zamperini's story is not just a tale of survival. It is a profound narrative of the unbroken spirit, a powerful reminder that even in the face of unimaginable adversity, hope can prevail.